Y'all thought you were gonna get me. Oh, no. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today, that's right, we're talking all about A Quiet Place Day 1. A huge thank you to Paramount Pictures for giving me the chance to watch this early in theaters for review, and you can check it out in theaters on June 28th. And y'all gotta let me know what you think of this one, because I'm a big fan of A Quiet Place Parts 1 and 2. Both of them are excellent movies. And a big reason why was because of John Krasinski's awesome directing and his incredible screen presence. But for A Quiet Place Day 1, we have a new director in the franchise, and that is Michael Sarnoski, who also directed Pig. And the movie stars Lupita Nyong'o as Sam, Joseph Quinn as Eric, and Djimon Hounsou as Henri. And yes, he's of course reprising the same character from A Quiet Place, the previous films, because this is a prequel, you guys. If you didn't know, A Quiet Place Day 1 takes place literally on day 1 of the alien invasion. And you know what? It was kind of cool. And in theory, it's smart to go back, because in A Quiet Place Part 1, what does it start on day like 80 something, and then we get into day 470 something. So I did like that they went all the way back to day 1 in New York City, one of the loudest cities in the world, and the movie tells us that its average noise decibel level is 90, which is that of a constant scream. So those aliens were eating good. But if you don't know much about A Quiet Place Day 1, here's a little without spoiling it. A woman named Sam finds herself trapped in New York City during the early stages of an invasion by alien creatures with ultrasonic hearing. And man, this is cool, because I, again, love this franchise, so it was neat to see them take us all the way back to the beginning. But before I take you into my positives, negatives, and all of my final thoughts, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you don't want to miss out on this busy summer movie season, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and again, let me know in the comments what you guys think of this movie when you see it. Is it your favorite of the franchise so far, or is it sort of at the bottom for you? Let me know in the comments, but I'm about to let y'all know that there are some good and positive takeaways for this movie. So let's get right into my positives, and we're going to begin at the top with our leads, because A Quiet Place Day 1 was always going to either sink or swim based on the connection and acting potential between both Joseph Quinn and Lupita Nyong'o. Now, Lupita, of course, is one of the greatest actors of my lifetime, so we knew she was going to bring it. But for me, I was thinking, Joseph Quinn, he did a really good job in Stranger Things, but will he ace it in this role? And I am happy to report that not only do they both deliver individually, but together, man, they're great. While the film does take a bit of time for me to get invested into these characters, once we finally get there by the middle of the film, they just start clicking, and you see their relationship and their friendship begin to bubble over the course of this film. And the movie's only about an hour and 40 minutes, right? So we don't have too much time to play with, but in that limited amount of time, we're able to see their relationship evolve. And I do love how we learn more about them as well as individuals, and you just start to really root for them. And I love that the movie gets to that point. One of the best moments in this movie, and the reason it works so well is because of the time we spend with them, is with Eric and Sam hanging out in this jazz bar, and you start to see them just being human. And sure, it's only been one day since this alien invasion began, but we begin to see how their lives radically transformed, and we get back to a sense of normalcy in this moment. It's my favorite moment in the movie. You see Joseph Quinn doing magic tricks, and you see Lupita Nyong'o just sort of begin, as Sam of course, begin to open up. And it's just a really well done sequence, and there are a couple like that in this movie. So yes, it's easy to root for them because of how great they are in this movie, and it also gets me excited for Joseph Quinn's future projects, one of them of course being in the MCU with Fantastic Four. But man, they were really great casting decisions, and I'm so glad that they are in this film, because the film is much better because of them both. Now, when it comes to who's behind the camera, director Michael Sarnoski, I believe, did a decent job with his first foray into blockbusters. Now remember, he directed Pig starring Nicolas Cage, a movie that I liked, but it's very much an indie movie, so to hop into something like this, That man did a good job. He also crushed it during the opener to this film, and it's par the course for the Quiet Place franchise so far. Remember in part 1 with John Krasinski's kid walking around and it has the loud spaceship and then the monster kills him, and then you have in part 2 where you're just with Emily Blunt in the car and it's excellent. But here in day 1, we're on a bus with Lupita Nyong'o, and I won't say much more than that. But things go from 0 to 100 real quick. And I love it because, of course, of Lupita, but also because of how tight that moment felt. So director Michael Sarnoski really understands the franchise. Now, there's also this connection between animals. So I don't know what it is. Maybe this is on purpose, but Michael Sarnoski, the whole connection with the pig and pig. And then here with Sam's cat, Frodo. And I thought, you know what? This is cute. I'm not a cat person, but this cat's cute. Every element in frame is generally effective in this movie, which is great. I also like how Michael Sarnoski played with some amazing sequences that really built tension. Now, it doesn't happen often in this movie, and we'll talk about that in the negatives, but there are a couple of sequences that I did feel pretty tense. And this is one in particular that we'll talk about just briefly, but when you see Sam, Frodo, and Eric treading water underground in a subway that is of course flooding with water, and they're trying to quietly pass through an infested part of the subway. That's all I'll say, but man, it was effective, and it really did a great job in getting me even more invested into this film than I was already by that point, because I started to care for these characters. Internally, I was screaming, just swim faster, but it was a really good scene. And the last thing I'll say about Michael Sarnoski's direction, surprisingly, this movie is at its best when he doesn't focus on the aliens and the jump scares. I know, you're probably thinking, what the heck? This is what I bought my ticket for. You'll get that too, don't worry, but the movie is genuinely much better when you're not focusing on those elements, because, again, I just wanted to know more about Sam and Eric and get to know how they're handling everything in this now, well, very close to being a post-apocalyptic setting. So I loved exactly how he frames the film in most moments. And then there's the creature designs, because, yeah, like I just mentioned, a lot of people are coming here for the aliens, and you get a huge dose of them here, maybe more than the other films. And I know what most people are going to say, oh my gosh, that looks like a Demogorgon in the face from Stranger Things, and look at that, there's Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things. While I guess I can see it, right? For the most part, the creature design is pretty unique, and I loved the VFX and CGI work here. It looks good, y'all. There's maybe one instance where I thought it didn't look too great at night. There's a moment where we see the aliens and they're nesting, and that's probably all I'll say. But I thought that for as maybe small as this movie was supposed to feel, because it's just New York City, and I say just, but it's a big city, I loved the creature designs. And yes, you can tell that they were terrifying because of the teeth and the, oh man. And I also like the little hints that the movie throws at us with how the creatures are beginning to live in New York City after they've invaded and taken the city by storm. It's almost an expansion on the lore, and I want more of that. I know there's some talk about a Quiet Place Part 3, right? So I really hope we get more into the lore of these creatures, because we got a little nibble at that and I said, oh really, we're going there? And then it breaks away. So I want more of that, because I think that would have actually helped this movie in particular. I get it, we probably didn't have enough time, but they're teasing at that, and now I want more of it. Alrighty guys, so now let's get into some negatives, because this isn't a perfect summer blockbuster movie. Is it going to be the worst? Absolutely not, but there are some weak elements here. And speaking of weak elements, this movie is the weakest of the bunch so far. Again, it's a prequel, you're limited in what you can do, I understand, but I felt like there were areas of opportunity in this movie where it could have been taken to another level, and we didn't quite get there. And unfortunately, the very slow start to this film doesn't help the movie. And I say slow not because it's actually focusing on characters. There's just not much to grip me in that first 30 minutes. There wasn't really a moment throughout the film, to be honest with you, where I was completely tense and holding my breath like I did in the previous 2 Quiet Place entries. I wasn't really fazed by the jump scares either, which did feel predictable and, to a degree, sort of cheap. I mean, our general audience was freaking out. Like, there were people that were squealing as if somebody stubbed their toe, but it didn't get me. And maybe that's just because I'm maturing. I don't know, guys, but none of these jump scares really made me jump. There's one moment that wasn't even a jump scare. It wasn't intended to be, and it made me jump. Maybe because I was so focused on something else in the movie. But yeah, the jump scares didn't ever get there for me, and I think by design, the movie should have been a little bit scarier than it was, but it felt more like a thriller than a horror movie, even though I know it's going to be billed as a summer horror blockbuster. And speaking to my previous thought about the movie taking a little while to get going, the first 30 minutes, I sort of struggled to lock in, and I was surprised because Lupita Nyong'o was delivering a good performance. It was just the character of Sam wasn't written very well. There's also no real connection, not only to Sam in the first act, but to her surrounding cast members. So there's a character played by Alex Wolff, who is the nurse and caregiver for Sam, and I never felt this connection with his character because there's a certain moment that happens in that first act where if I did, maybe it would have impacted me a little bit more. But I just do wish that Michael Sarnoski and his writing crew were able to do a better job at getting us off to a hot start. The movie does get better as you go on and as we get introduced to Sam and Eric's dynamic together, but I don't necessarily think that first act is going to win over a lot of audiences. So if you're watching the movie or planning on watching the movie, stick with it because it's not going to be strong at the beginning, but it does get better. And throughout the film, I feel that technically the movie didn't leave me in awe. And that's kind of weird because for a movie like this, you would imagine the cinematography to be on point, the score to be pounding or pulse pounding really in some instances, but I never felt that. Speaking to the score here by Alexis Grapsas, I feel like the movie should have had a subtle but pulse pounding score in some instances, and I get that it's got to play to the silence, which is fine, but in the moments where the music comes in, it just didn't impact me at all, and I don't think it impacted the film either. It just felt very meh, very one-dimensional to a degree. And when it comes to the cinematography, and if you know me guys, you know I love my cinematography, I was hoping that this is a department that would have reflected what we saw in Pig, because Pat Scola worked on Pig as the DP, and he's a DP here for a day one. Not a day one, sorry, day one. But I really thought some shots were a little flat. And that's weird considering the fact that we are in New York City and considering the fact that we have, I mean, honestly, a movie with this sort of premise, so you should have had more dynamic angles. It just felt a little too head-on sometimes, and it does take you out of some of those scenes where you're trying to build tension. So I would have liked them to maybe get a little bit more inventive with some angles and not so straightforward. But I don't say that to say the movie is terrible, because overall, you guys, I mean, I'm coming away from A Quiet Place Day 1 enjoying the movie. It really is one of those popcorn summer blockbuster movies. It's not going to be scary, and it's not going to be too thrilling for you to be, I guess, so tense to the point where you're not enjoying the experience. It's a roller coaster ride, and it worked for me. And I thought the movie did a decent job, let's say, at setting up the stakes for the eventual Quiet Place Parts 1 and 2, because this is, again, a prequel movie. So Michael Sarnoski was a little limited in what he could do, but he got the absolute 2 best actors for their roles here, in Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn. They do a great job here, and if not for them, I believe the movie would have been way worse off, because they elevate the film to levels that it had no business being on in some instances, and by the end, I did eventually care for these characters. The movie takes a little while to get going, right? But when we're finally out of the gates, the wheels are greased up and we're going, we're moving and grooving, you start to finally feel like you're invested in these characters. So is the movie going to blow your mind this summer? It's not. But for me, it's a solid 3.5 out of 5 if I even had to rate it. And it's a movie that, hey, I could catch it on streaming again because I did love my experience in the theater, and hey, this is the kind of movie where the sound design is good, not great compared to the previous two Quiet Place movies, but it's good. You should see it in theaters because of how those moments that I described that were tense, they're going to feel even more tense in that theatrical setting. When you're at home, you got distractions and stuff, so seeing this for the first time in theaters is a good idea. And I need to know, when you see it in theaters, what you thought of it. Do you agree with me in my take? Let me know in the comments below. But guys, that's all I got for my real review of A Quiet Place Day 1, which again hits theaters this weekend. So hit the big red button below if you enjoyed this review and want more of these reviews moving forward, because I got a lot more coming. Despicable Me 4 coming up. We got Deadpool and Wolverine in July. Oh my gosh, everyone's so excited. Not me. It's a hot take, I know. But alrighty, y'all. I gotta get to work on prepping for that, for the Dragon Prince Season 6 and so much more. So, y'all, again, thanks so much for watching. God bless you guys, and I'll catch you at the next screening. I just did so much talking. How many of these aliens are waiting for me right now outside my room? Go away. You don't even pay rent.